Today we're going to be learning how to build Sonic drinks, all about syrups and carbon. Just kidding, that's not what we're talking about today at all. But we are going to talk about Sonic drinks a little bit, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But today, actually, we're going to be talking about why is employee retention important? How are teams like Sonic drinks? Talking about a little bit about motivation and about some theories about that. And we're going to be talking about recognition programs. Hopefully, we're going to give you something that you can take away today and start using right away at your own institutions. But we'll go ahead and get started with some introductions. I'll start with myself. My name is Angela Mazzolini. I'm the Assistant Managing Director of the Grants Management Team at Texas Tech University, and I'm very excited today to get to present theory of motivation today. And I'm going to turn it over to Elliani.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elliani, and I am a research administrator at Southern Utah University. I've only been in this role for a year and really only been in research administration for a year, but I still think there's a lot that can be learned from these different perspectives. So yeah, I'm really excited today to talk about the different generations in the workforce. And I will now let Aurora, present herself.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Aurora Kenworthy. I'm a contracts negotiator at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I'm excited today to discuss kind of some recognition ideas and go over some options that people can implement in their own teams. And with that, we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide. Now that we've all introduced ourselves, I'm going to turn it back over to Angela, who's going to start us off on the first topic, why employee retention is important.
Awesome, thank you. So why does this matter to us at all, right? Retention is important because it leads to the bigger idea of longevity. And when we think about longevity on teams, as a manager, especially as I'm looking at it, if I can spend less time training and more time focusing on professional development or problem solving, ultimately that leads to better customer service for our campus and for other partners that we have, including our sponsoring agencies. And so that's why I really am passionate about this topic, just because if we can keep people engaged, keep people in their roles, we can retain some institutional knowledge, and then we get to dive deeper into topics. We get to learn more about, each individual sponsoring agency or each individual campus partner that we have. And that allows us just to provide the best customer service that we have. So I think that's why this is a really, really important topic. I'm going to pass it over to Elliani, who's going to talk more about why we need to keep employees engaged.
Yeah, and I'd like to really do a deep dive into the different generations and how we can engage them in the workplace. So first, I would like you all to take a second and think, after you had an interview and a job offer, why did you say yes to your current position? Awesome. So now that we've kind of thought about that, I'll just share my experience, my answer. I said yes for two reasons. The first one was because I wanted to work in grants and I wanted to work in research administration. I didn't quite know what it was, but I interviewed for it, and so that was one reason why I said yes. The second reason I said yes to the position was when I was sitting in the room and I was looking at all the interviewers, I thought to myself, can I see myself working with this team? Is this somewhere where I want to be? And that played a pretty big role in why I said yes too, because I didn't want to say yes to a job that I knew that I would clash with people and would ultimately want to leave, right? The next question I want to ask and have everyone reflect on for a couple seconds is, what was your first day at work like? And what was your first week like? Awesome. My first day and first week, I honestly don't remember. It was only a year ago and it's already a blur. I do remember two things though. Well, three things. The first one was On like hour 2, my supervisor had me sign up to be an NCURA member, so she obviously has her priorities straight. I do remember that she had me take a strengths finding test so that I could learn a little bit about myself. And then lastly, I just remember that I had a good time with everyone, that everyone was really kind and accommodating and answered my questions and made me feel really welcome. So the reason I ask this is because research has actually shown that Generation Z, which is the generations that's actually entering the workforce right now, their impressions from the first day and the first week determine whether or not they will stay in their position. So it's really important to keep that in mind. As we're going forward for the rest of this presentation, I just wanted to give you a couple of different ideas of generations in the workplace and how they're affected, and what they do in the workplace, just as kind of like a foundation as we can continue talking. That being said, I want to give 2 disclaimers. The first one is that a lot of researchers who do research on generations is they say that this is very general. So we don't want to put specific generations in a box, right, and give them these qualities that everyone has. The second thing is that the dates are kind of gray areas. So if you're like, well, I don't think that I'm a millennial, but you're telling me that these dates say that I am a millennial, that's fine. You don't have to identify as a millennial. These are just dates that researchers have put out. So just a couple of quick facts. Generation Z, which is 1995 to 2010, they're entering the workplace with less experience than any other generation before. They love a good social purpose and they love teams, working in teams or with teams. Millennials, which are 1977 to 1995, are very outcome driven. They like to know what the end goal is and they like to get to the end goal. And they also really want a unique experience. They want their job to be a unique experience, but they also want to give people a unique experience through their job. Generation X, which is about 1965 to 1976, are the glue because they are connecting the older generations with the younger generations at work. They are naturally skeptical, which is a good thing, I would say, in the workplace. And they're in the tough spots because a lot of times they're parenting kids, but they're also parenting parents. So they have a lot going on outside of work. And then finally, we have the boomers, which is 1964 and older, and they are really big on work ethic and paying your dues. And they are the most influential right now in the workplace because of their legacy and loyalty. So I just wanted to give that as kind of a brief overview. I'm now going to pass it over to Aurora, who will talk about how teams are like Sonic drinks.
Awesome. So the titular slide, we finally got to the Sonic drinks. So we're going to start by just kind of doing an icebreaker. If you want to go ahead in the chat, kind of say what your favorite Sonic drink is, or if you have another drink that you love, what's your kind of go-to combo when you're ordering a beverage? I like their cherry limeade. I think that's pretty good. We're seeing green apple Sprite. That's kind of fun. Ooh, nerds. Interesting. Cherry limeade. Yep, that's what I said too. That's really good. Ooh, a Diet Coke with lime and cream. Okay. Okay, no Sonics. Interesting. Ocean water. Also good. Yes. Mango raspberry. Interesting. Yeah. So kind of a wide variety. People have obviously their favorites. Everyone kind of likes different things and has, you know, different compositions, different flavor combinations. And so we'll get into a little bit now how that connects to teams. So teams are in some ways like Sonic drinks. So as we kind of mentioned in the chat, people have kind of customizations. So Sonic drinks are customizable. But you do sometimes have to be careful about balancing things. Not everyone likes all the combinations. So unique personalities, strengths, and preferences are always on a team. Teams have complicated kind of relationships and dynamics. And so the key message here is that the best combinations require balance. So think about how to kind of even things out. And then another consideration is that the ice melts. So surface level perks don't last. sometimes, yeah, you leave that soda in that cup holder a little too long, it's not so good. You get watered down. So the key message there is just like ice in the Sonic drink, that feel-good effect of a perk, that introduction, that first kind of meeting when you're starting a job can melt over time. So sustained motivation is a real important factor in keeping people interested and active in their positions. And so we're going to go ahead and do another poll. And let's think about this time, what characteristics are seen in successful teams? Either teams you've been on or teams you've seen other people part of. What were some characteristics that made that successful? Yeah, communication. I think that's a big one for sure. Yeah. Transparency. Yes, I think that goes nicely with communication. Absolutely. Openness, kind of the same idea. Yeah. Trust and respect, also good. Yeah, knowledge sharing. I like that. Again, kind of, yeah, related to that transparency, that openness, the ability to get ideas across and communicate. Good. I think some good ones too on our little like Wordle thing is the coaching, that building together, authenticity. Yeah, willing to help others. Exactly. Yeah. Good. Awesome. Well, I think those are definitely some good ideas. Yeah, good rapport. That's good too. Yeah. Ability to kind of work together and feel comfortable reaching out. Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over back to Elliani, who is going to talk about retention and employee motivation and finding strengths and implementing them.
Thank you. All right, so yes, we're going to talk about finding strengths and implementing them, as that helps with employee retention and motivation. And as we're talking about this, I really want to have you think about your strengths, but also the strengths of members on your team. Looking at and noticing others is really key. And it's really key to be a leader. And even if you're not in a leadership role right now, you can be a natural leader and by noticing the strengths of others. I think that's really important. Something else that's really important that I'm probably going to say another 6 times during this webinar is that recognition is key. You really recognizing what people's strengths are, what they're doing well, really helps people feel better. So, which is why we're going to talk about a recognition program later. So just a couple things to keep in mind. Can we go to the next slide, please? Awesome. So as we read here, not every strength is on a resume. Strengths emerge when we ask good questions and pay close attention to what people naturally lean into and what lights them up, including, of course, yourself. And this is very important as people are starting new jobs in your office, or they're on a new project, or they're in a new team or new department. This is kind of like a crucial time when they're starting something new to start paying attention to those different strengths. If we go to the next slide, please. So there's a couple of ways to find strengths. You can use an actual strength finder or a strength quiz like Clifton Strengths, DISC, or MBTI, which reveal how people think, work, and relate. And a lot of these are research-based, so they're not just your BuzzFeed quiz, right? They're actually research-based, and that can help you find your strengths and help your colleagues find your strengths. You can also ask strength-based questions, including to yourself, maybe in moments of reflection, or when you're meeting with your supervisor, or if you're a supervisor, asking your supervisees these questions, which can really help you recognize maybe things that you didn't realize that are really important to you, but as you're asked these questions that you find really motivate you. You also want to observe energy and not just performance, because if you think about a student who got straight A's all throughout high school and their undergrad and their graduate degree, and they worked really hard, they might be doing great on their tasks and their projects that you assign them, but that doesn't necessarily mean they like them. They just are a high performer, right? So you want to see what tasks really light team members up, where they maybe volunteer themselves or where they show initiative or go above and beyond. You also want to see peer-to-peer feedback. this is where I can tell Angela or Aurora, like, I've really noticed this about you. And when you listen in and hear those different interactions, maybe that's not something that Angela recognized in herself, but now that I've pointed it out, right, that's something that she can move forward with. You also want to reflect on past successes, when you felt most proud of a project, or when maybe your team member felt most proud of a project. That can indicate what kind of their strengths are and what motivates them. And then as you're doing all of these different things, make sure you're documenting that. It's great to say, oh, I really noticed this in Aurora, but if you don't write it down, then you're not going to remember it or take advantage of it in the future. So those are different ways to find strengths. Now we're going to talk a little bit about implementing strengths. And I'm going to leave this slide up for a second as we do a little practice. I'm going to have us take 1 minute and write down some strengths that you have. And we're all going to do this. So I'm going to do this as well. So at 12:50 my time, 50 on the 50 mark, we'll talk again, but I'll give you a minute to write down some strengths you have. Great. I wanted to point out 2 things as you were taking time to write down your strengths. Remember that strengths can be something more abstract, like I'm really good at people, or they can be something more concrete, like I'm really good at writing budgets, right? So strengths can be both more abstract and more practical. I also want to note that as I was writing my own strengths, I got really hypercritical really fast. I thought to myself, well, I'm actually not good at budgets. So it's important to remember what you are good at and not just think about the things you're bad at. So now we're going to take 1 minute, and I want you to look at the person sitting closest to you, whether that's someone in the office over or someone at the same table as you, and take 1 minute to write down some strengths that they have that you've noticed. Great. Something I noticed as I did that practice was it was so much easier for me to think about other people's strengths than my own. So that's okay. That's something we're working on. And that's why we're doing practices like this. So now that we've found our strengths and our coworkers' strengths, there's something else we need to do after that step, and that's implementing said strengths. So there's a couple ways to do this, as you can see on the slides. The first one is to think about assigning the projects and the tasks to people, even if it doesn't necessarily fall under their job title, to take advantage of their talents and their strengths, because not only will the job get done better, but they'll actually enjoy your work and you'll probably enjoy the finished project better. Also, it's important to rotate responsibilities. and give them opportunities to shine in those different spots, and putting people outside of their comfort zones or outside of their little silo that they've built for themselves or that you've even built for them, right? So if we're rotating, we get the chance to look at different people's strengths. Also, creating ownership opportunities where you let someone take a lead in a project or mentor their peer or work on the budget for the first time. Doing things like that really lets people find out what their strengths are, because maybe they don't recognize a strength until they're given that opportunity when they have to take responsibility for that themselves. You should use these strengths and implement these strengths in problem solving. So if you've noticed someone is really good at the brainstorming piece, even if that's not their role, give them that opportunity and let them take ownership of that. Once you start noticing people's strengths, like we did, we just wrote down your strengths and other people's strengths. Tell the people around you the strengths that you've noticed in them. That will help them recognize it in themselves. That will help their supervisors recognize it, and that will help you build a more cohesive team. And its recognition is free. It's just a really nice thing to do for people. You go home feeling better about yourself. And then finally, it's good to do these things naturally and kind of build this in, but it's also good to make a plan and write down, I noticed this strength in my coworker and this is how I'm going to utilize it. Or I've noticed this strength in me and this is how I'm going to utilize that. So I wanted to give a couple of examples of the finding strengths and then the implementing strengths. So my team is really big on the Clifton Strength Finder, where you take a quiz and you find out what your strengths are. So we have a new colleague, a new student worker whose name is Erica, and she's awesome. And she found out one of her strengths is futuristic, which means she always wants to see the end goal before she starts working on the project. We found that strength, and we haven't talked about how to implement it yet, but it's up to her supervisors and to me as her colleague to find out how we can implement that. We have another student worker in our office who took the same quiz and found out that his big strengths are empathy and being an influencer. And so he is our official welcomer. When people come into our office for the first time, he's kind of the first face they see because he's awesome at making people feel welcome and excited to work with our office. So those are kind of like they took an official quiz and they were told what their strengths were. You can also do it in a more natural way. I was in my undergraduate degree, I was an English major. And what that meant is that basically I went to book club every day for class. We would read one chapter and then we would analyze the crap out of it. And we'd talk about every line, right? So I'm really good at analyzing books. And I thought, how can I apply that to my job now? Well, we started up a new initiative. I started it up because I didn't really know where my place was. And I thought I'm going to try and take the initiative and make a place for myself. So once a week, my team watches a TED Talk or listens to a podcast or reads a news article. And then we come together and have a 20-minute discussion about that. And it's usually work related or leadership related or something professional development related. But I found that I'm really good at leading those discussions because that's what I did in my undergrad for 4 years. So it's really important as you're thinking of your strengths to see how you can then incorporate them and then take the initiative and incorporate them. Because then I found out that I found my place in work and I really enjoyed coming into work. So those are a couple of ways you can think about implementing your strengths. So now I'm going to turn the time over to Angela to talk about the Hertzberg theory and motivation.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was some great information, and I think that's really going to fit into some things that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So keep those notes that you took because you're going to need them in a few minutes. So right now we're going to talk about Hertzberg's two-factor theory. So this was founded on research from the 1960s, but it's still being used in research for motivation today. It is influenced by Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and usually we think of things, satisfaction on a continuum, like I'm really satisfied or I'm really dissatisfied, and you could land anywhere on that continuum. But instead of one continuum, Hertzberg talks about two independent sets of factors, intrinsic and extrinsic factors, and he calls them motivation and hygiene factors. So let's talk a little bit about those. If we'll go to the next slide. we can see here that we have the motivation factors. These are the ones that are needed for growth or self-actualization. So if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You take that little triangle at the top, that's that self-actualization. So that's really what we have to get, all of these things working to be able to grow. So these are things like achievement, recognition, the work itself, responsibility, advancement, and the possibility for growth. And then we also have hygiene factors. These are ones that not needed for growth, but are needed to avoid unpleasant things. So hygiene factors include company policies and admin, relationships with the supervisors, interpersonal relationships with other coworkers, working conditions, and salary. So motivation factors operate. So if we go back to that motivation, only to improve job satisfaction, whereas hygiene factors work to reduce job dissatisfaction. So they have to work in tandem. But if we get to hygiene factors and someone is never going to be happy with their hygiene factors, so if they never reach satisfaction on that scale, they will never be able to enjoy the motivation factors. So they have to work together. I think this is really important for, especially a lot of times, managers who are hiring, or even when you're on a team and somebody leaves, right? And it can be really discouraging. I know that we've all been in offices where there have been turnover before, right? Or maybe you're the one that left. And I think sometimes we really beat ourselves up about, well, I wish I had done more, or if we had only done this, maybe they would have stayed. And maybe that's true. But a lot of times there's some things that I can't control. I work at a university. Do I control what I get to pay the people who work for me? I sure do not. I don't get to control what I get paid, right? So if there's only so much I control. I have a little bit of a range that I can control, but not a lot. In our office, we work in cubicles. I can't control that. If that's not a place where someone can thrive, then I'm never going to be able to overcome that and get them, even doesn't matter how much I recognize them, doesn't how much they enjoy their work. If they're not happy with their working conditions, I'm never going to be able to get them to grow and to feel like they have a place and that they're going to be able to reach those motivation factors. Let's talk a little bit about an article that I read and I want to share with you guys. If we can go to the next slide, there was this great Forbes article and it talks about motivating employees to be future ready. And it takes some of these ideas that we were talking about there and laid them out in some practical ways that are maybe a little bit more not 1960s, but maybe more practical for today's understanding. But there were 6 ideas that they talked about in this article. And the first one was help employees understand what motivates them. Now, I think Elliani just started talking about that too. What are their strengths? Can you implement some of these different, the strengths finder or the different, we are big on Enneagram at our school. So what are some different things that can help them understand what motivates them? This can help in career growth. This can help get them engaged quickly and sooner. And keep them engaged in the long run, and also helps them better to identify their responsibilities at work. The second one was understand the needs and issues of team members. This is really important because this helps us not just see people as employees, but see them as actual people. People are not goals and deliverables. They are people, right? They have feelings and emotions and they have goals and they have things that they want to work on. And so really getting to understand the people behind the work, that's what we want to make sure that we're getting it across. Also, we in this article talked about expecting employees to be engaged 100% of the time. That's not realistic, right? I don't even know if for 90 minutes I can keep you engaged 100% of the time. So how can I keep you engaged for, 40 hours a week? That's crazy. But if we can really think about uh, seeing people as people, knowing they have home lives, knowing that they have real things going on, I think that really humanizes them and helps us understand when things maybe go awry, right? The third one is grant them, your employees, the authority along with responsibility. So you have my permission to reach out to that faculty member if they're not being responsive. You have my permission to include their supervisor should it need it. If we need a response to get something done on our end, then we definitely need to be able to have the power and authority that goes along with that to get our jobs done effectively. And when we do this gives such a confidence boost to them and to our coworkers and our employees, and just helps them be more productive, but also just helps them feel like they have a better place on the team. The next one is investing in the growth of employees. So help them find ways to grow, even if it's outside the office. We actually have, I don't know how to pronounce it, y'all. It's either Udemy or Udemy. I've heard it pronounced multiple ways, but it's a free service that our university has partnered with this company, and they offer a lot of different professional development pieces that's free to our employees. And so we definitely encourage anybody who works for us to take advantage of that. They can learn if they're not, maybe they come to us without an accounting background, they can take some simple accounting courses and learn those things. Maybe they want to learn how to manage their time better. Well, that's a great resource for them to take advantage of. So we really want to invest in them. This really shows that you care about people and you care about them and want to see them grow, even if it's outside of your office, right? And then number 5 is act upon feedback as soon as possible. Man, this is so important, right? How many times have we talked to a supervisor in the past and expressed a concern and they're like, okay, and then nothing ever happened about it, right? I think that's where we tend to feel like maybe it doesn't matter what we do, even if that's not the case. But that's the message it sends. So acting upon feedback as soon as possible, it really shows that you're invested in your team. Then number 6, be genuine, right? Authenticity is so important. I think that we hear that a lot lately, but it is just, it can't be overstated. The more authentic you are, the more transparent you are, the more genuine you are, the better relationships you'll build on your team, no matter where you are on the team. And so I think those points were really, really important to bring across. And I hope that's helpful for you. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some recognition programs. If we go back to that motivation, we can go to the next slide. If we go think about those motivation factors from Hertzberg again, achievement, recognition, right? This is one of those that leads to growth and helps us get our team members to realize self-actualization, is this recognition. This is important because it's things that we can start doing right away. So if we look at the next slide, we're going to go through different ways to potentially building out a well-rounded recognition program. So I'm going to pass this over to Aurora, and she's going to talk about some day-to-day things we can do.
Thanks, Angela. Yeah, so we're going to look at kind of the foundation of the pyramid, or the day-to-day things that people can engage in. And I really like this level because this especially can be for anyone, not just a supervisor. This is really an opportunity for, no matter if you've just worked, for a year, or if you've been in the office for 5 years, something you can, engage in and help with team building with your coworkers. So I think one option is recognizing people in a group chat, a group Slack message, something like that, and just shouting out, this behavior was really great, this person did a really great job, so that everyone can kind of see. I think that's always nice. department meetings, team meetings, you can do that as well. Kind of building a personal file of glowy kind of recommendations, save those for evaluations. Handwritten cards are also really nice. Thank you notes, I think, are always good. If someone's done something that really helped you or you noticed something really great, writing out a little thank you card can be really, really nice, and people like to receive those. So I'm going to go ahead and give it back to Elliani, who's going to work on the next level.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about weekly or monthly recognition, things you can do to recognize people to build into your recognition program. So these are things that are maybe out of the ordinary, or something that you've really recognized a strength you've seen someone implementing that you've recognized and want to point out to them. It should be specific and intentional. And it should be something that you've noticed, but that you want to highlight for that person specifically. It's important to note that some people like to be recognized in a group space. I love it. I'm like, yes, everyone should know that I'm awesome. Some people do not like that, and they would prefer like a smaller, more intimate conversation or thank you card or something like that. So there's two kind of thoughts that I had with the weekly or monthly section of the recognition program. One is taking advantage of things that your institution does to recognize people. For example, my institution has something called Caught Red-Handed, and it's when you're caught red-handed doing something nice. And it's an online form that I just have to fill out, and I say, I saw Aurora doing this. This was outside of her normal work duties or what I would normally expect, and it was awesome, and so I just want to recognize them. So that's one. So take advantage, if your institution has things like this to do, to take advantage of those. And if not, that's something you can either implement institutionally if you want to take that on, or just within your office, right? Just say, I'm going to do this. You can fill out this online form, and I'm going to go deliver this little thank you for them. And it's really nice because it's, at least for us, it's just a little form I fill out, and then somebody else prints it out and delivers it to them, and it's anonymous. And that's, I think, a really cute idea. So that's something you can implement or take advantage of. But it's important when you do these things to, for example, I have a reminder on my calendar every week to fill out the Red-Handed Award, because if I don't remind myself, I'm probably not going to do it. So I have it as a weekly reminder to pick someone throughout the week that was awesome, and remind them and fill out this little thing for them. I will say that I didn't do that until I started working on this presentation, and I was thinking about, what's some good weekly and monthly, motivation or recognition programs. And I was like, oh my gosh, my institution has one. I just haven't taken advantage of it. So I'm just letting you know that if you feel bad you haven't been doing this before, that's okay. That's why we're having this webinar, is so you can start implementing things. A second thing you can do, and I think this is important too, is that recognition programs don't necessarily have to be for work that they're doing. It can just be for being a part or a member on your team. Like Angela was saying, that we're all human beings at our core. And so even if someone's not thriving right now, maybe that there's something else that's going on personally, and it's still important to recognize them. So something else my office does is we have weekly newsletters where it's like, hey, these are the applications we need to be paying attention to, and these are the things we're working on, and everybody kind of fills out their section of things that they're doing. In that newsletter, we've started a team member highlight, where we put in information about a team member. So and usually we turn it into a little bit of a game, right? So we say this team member's favorite color is blue, and they have a dog, and they love pizza. And we put that in the newsletter, and then people have to guess who that team member is. And it's really fun because it's not necessarily recognizing something they did, but it's recognizing them as a person. It's helping to build that team to get togetherness, and it's helping you to get to know a coworker, because I had no idea that so-and-so loved pizza, but I love pizza. So maybe we should do pizza for lunch sometime, right? So I think that's another weekly or monthly thing you can start implementing, as well as an effort to get to know your team members and recognize them as people and not just as coworkers, if that makes sense. So Now I'm going to pass it over to Angela, who will talk about quarterly recognition program efforts.
Those are all really great ideas. I love that you shared that. Starting today, right? It doesn't have to be something that you've been doing. It's starting today, and that's what we hope that you can take away for this. One thing that we started doing in my department is doing employee of the quarter. And so we have a nomination form and everybody has access to it. And so we encourage everybody to fill this out. And we actually tie it back to our core values. And we ask them how, you know, kind of like the red-handed thing. You saw them do this thing. Tell us how it attaches to the core values that we have in our department. And it has been really interesting to see who all gets nominated. But what I love is the really specific things that are mentioned. And that really makes the feedback to the person who gets the award, it makes it so much more meaningful. And so what we do is we have our employees submit that, and then the managers and directors vote on the person for the quarterly employee, and then we hand that out at a team meeting. So we also encourage self-nominations, but I'll be honest, nobody has self-nominated yet, but we do have that open, because sometimes you do something that's really great and nobody else sees it, but you're like, I did great today, you know? But that we actually haven't seen that yet, but definitely open to it. One thing we decided to do is something that Elliani mentioned, is that not everybody wants to be recognized the same way. And so while we do call them out in a meeting, it is a smaller team meeting. We do give them a certificate and we do write down all the things that were mentioned about them. So if 3 people nominated them, we'll put everything on that certificate that somebody listed out about them. And I think that makes it really special too. But we allow them to pick from this list. So would you like honestly, Sonic drinks are on there. Would you like a Sonic drink? Do you want to go on a tea date with somebody? We have like specialty tea places around our campus. I don't know, there's got to be like 4 or 5 of them around here. I don't know. So sometimes we'll go on a tea run. So that could be something. It could be we used to have snack bags around in the different areas in our office that you could come pick from. Really, the big ones have been Jeans Day and an extra work from home day. Those have been big winners for our people who have been chosen as an employee of the quarter so far. So if it were me, y'all, not gonna lie, a day with no meetings, totally, I would be all over that. That would mean more to me than anything else, I think. But yeah, so anyway, these are just some things that we listed out. These are just a small list of things. Think about what's relevant for your university. Like you know what, if we do gift certificates or something like that, it is out of our own pocket. It's not department or university sponsored. So we do want to try to keep the cost low, because let's say that we had 4 employees of the quarter, that, you know, that could in one quarter. Yes, of course, we're going to have 4 in the year. But like if we had a 4-way tie one quarter, right? That could be quite a bit of money. And not everybody has the means to do that. And so it's not about the dollar amount, it's about the recognition. And so just keep that in mind. What could you get? Is it possible for you to talk to your rec center? Could you get a day pass for somebody who doesn't already have a pass there? We have a really awesome lazy river, so I think that would be a really cool recognition for somebody, is to be able to get a pass to go enjoy the lazy river. Maybe we could get tickets to a university sporting event. Maybe you could contact your hospitality program and see if they would donate a meal card for the day or something like that. There can be lots of things that you can do that don't cost you anything at all. And so I would encourage you to kind of make that list for yourself and start thinking about those things, because it isn't about the money, right? It's about the recognition, and just making sure, don't let the money part of it be why you don't recognize somebody. And so this has been really a good success for us. And so we're going to continue to do that. And then the next thing we wanted to talk about after quarterly is, of course, annual, right? So we are still working on this part of our recognition program. And so one idea that I had for this was recognizing individuals at the end of the year, obviously. So maybe it's, if we had the nominees for the quarter, so maybe it's anybody who got nominated for the whole year, or maybe we start from scratch and have people nominate starting now and nominate for annual. We're getting close to the end of our fiscal year, so this would be a good time to start thinking about that. But we every year have a big meeting to prep for our fiscal year end. And so I think that would be a great time. We list out all the accomplishments that we've had for the year. I think this might be a great time to recognize an employee of the year. It's in front of everybody in the department, not just your small team. And so I think it really stands out as something very, very special. And so I think that could be one way to help build out an annual employee of the year. But Aurora, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'll share what my institution does. So annually, we have a really large kind of gathering of the entire Office of Research and Innovation. And so during that meeting, people put up kind of kudos, similar to Elliani's caught red-handed. People submit their coworker kudos. And so there's a big slideshow of everyone's accomplishments and what everyone's coworkers really saw and what they thought was kind of standing out. So I think that's a really good way to get feedback from your peers. And it is nice because it is a kind of a larger gathering. It's not just our office, it's the entire kind of bigger office group. So that's something that's kind of nice. And then we also do a newsletter, kind of an annual report. And so people are able to submit kind of their accomplishments or the conferences they've gone to, the activities they've done. And lots of times people include personal aspects, kind of going with that theme of people are people, right? And have lives outside of work. I think celebrating those things as well as your work accomplishments can also be really great. So those are two kind of things our institution has implemented that I think have been really successful. So I'll pass it over to Elliani and she can share her experiences.
Yeah, so something along with that annual report that my office does is we do a presentation where we present our annual report to all of our stakeholders. So literally everyone is invited, and it's this whole big affair that we do. It's usually in November as almost like a thank you, as a Thanksgiving. So thanks for participating and working with our office and working with the university. And during that time, it's our team that presents the annual report, and our supervisor, says, okay, now Elliani will present on this stuff. And every time she does that, even though it's not in the script, she'll throw in nice compliments about who I am and what work I've done, which just makes me feel, really special and really awesome. So that's one way to do that. That happens annually. The second thing that our institution does, and that I kind of want to build out more, is our institution does a big, faculty and staff program every year, and they recognize people who have been there like at the 5-year mark or the 10-year mark or the 35-year mark, and they give them a little cute prize, which is awesome. I think that's really important for recognizing people's work. Once again, it's not necessarily recognizing anything they did specific, but just the fact that they've been here this long and been contributing for so long. Something that I've started to think about is maybe instituting that at a smaller level, just in my department, of when people have been there, when they hit their year mark, just to recognize that they've done that and they've hit their year mark. And even if it's just a shout out in the group chat, like, oh my gosh, Angela's at, 1 year, we're so proud of her. So things like that, to just do some small recognition on that level as well. So those are kind of what I was thinking of annually. So if we'll go to the next slide, we're going to kind of wrap up here and think about, what did you learn today? I mean, we learned about the Hertzberg two-factor theory. We learned about motivation to be future ready and how to create a recognition program. So I'm going to give everyone a second to put in the chat a couple of things that stood out to them today. Awesome. Okay, well, I hope that as we've been doing this presentation, you've been thinking about what did we learn, but not only that, but how can we implement it? So if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk about that as well. So what can our next steps be? Before we talk about practical next steps, I want to talk about a foundational next step, is just keeping in mind that even if you are not a manager or a supervisor, you are a leader. And being a leader means building people up. And so something that I've thought about as we've been talking, some next steps that I'm going to take, is I'm going to take time to write down my strengths, and not just write them down, but think about how I can implement them. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get to know my newest coworker a little bit better and learn what their strengths are and kind of point those out to them and see how we can collaborate. And then the third thing I'm going to do is pick something from our recognition program and start to try and implement it for myself. So those are some of my next steps. I don't know, Angela or Aurora, if you have some next steps you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, I just want to throw this out there, y'all. Dollar Tree, $1.25, thank you cards for 6, right? And they have some pretty cute ones. So I always try to, every time, I'm a Dollar Tree addict, I'll just fully admit that. But every time I go in there, I just try to pick up a pack of thank you notes so that I have some on hand, or blank. They don't have to be thank you notes. They can just be blank notes, so that you can write something kind to someone. So I'm going to add that back to my calendar. I think that's fallen off lately, and that's definitely something that is meaningful, and people keep them. I know they do, because I've seen them hanging up in their cubicles. And so it means a lot. And so I need to get back to doing that. So that's the next step that I'm going to take.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think to piggyback off of that, kind of just being cognizant of your reputation as kind of a team builder and as someone that's interested in growing your colleagues and helping them develop as well, I think is really important. And I think all of the things we kind of talked about, all of the things Elliani and Angela just mentioned, can really help build that reputation and help get that team solidified. So, yeah. All right, well, I think we're ready to move into the next portion, which is our question and answer portion. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will have our panelists answer them. Okay, and let's start with our first question. So how do you recommend approaching team building when the ages vary within a team?
So I'll take that one. I think that it goes back to a lot of what Elliani was talking about those strengths. Like, age to me is less important than what people's strengths are and where they can fill in the gaps on the team. So there might be someone who is brand new to our team, but they have a really strong accounting background. Well, guess what? I'm going to have them focus on invoicing, right? There might be somebody who is comes in who has a ton of experience with leading teams. Well, I'm probably going to have them working as a lead. So helping them be like a mini manager of sorts, right? Or developing them into succession planning to be a manager. We all communicate a little bit differently. And I think that, as part of Gen X, as we don't like anyone, I think is what Elliani said. I can see that being true with Gen X for sure. But also I think that it is important to be able to be knowledgeable about how different people communicate. And so knowing that having a good foundation of knowing that Gen Z is really looking for the experience. What are they going to be able to contribute to the world as a whole? And knowing that maybe someone who falls into that boomer category is really just there to get their job done and do it well. How do we work together to make those things coexist? And I think there is a way to do it. I think it is being authentic, again, having open lines of communication, getting us all on the same page. What is our ultimate goal? How can we work together and use our strengths to get there together?
I'm going to add on to what Angela was saying, specifically about communication. I researched generations in the workplace a couple of months ago, so it's just like on the forefront of my mind. And they talked about how different generations like to be communicated to in different ways. So your boomers are going to like a nicely worded email, right? That has everything laid out, which is awesome. Generation Z and millennials like quick little chats with emojis and funny YouTube videos mixed in with it, right? So they're going to communicate different ways. And so as a manager or as becoming a manager or looking to be a leader, it's important to communicate to those groups in the way they like to be communicated to. Also, I believe it was boomers and Gen X like to have their instructions written out, and Gen Z and millennials like quick videos that are just like 30 seconds on this is how you do the next thing. So those are a couple of ways when we're talking communication specifically on how to work with different generations.
Got a question that came and said, would you implement any of these ideas differently for an office where the employees are remote? My office is hybrid. So, and we actually do have some fully remote. So yes and no. I think that it depends on if people are expected to come in for meetings in person. I think that you may have to tweak some things, right? If all of your meetings are always online, then it may, instead of, obviously you wouldn't go grab tea together, probably because you're not working in the same city, but maybe you can send a gift card for everybody to go get tea at the same time, or the recognition can still happen though. Sending those quick emails or sending quick ideas, or recognition through Teams messages or Slack or however, those are still really important and can still be really effective, even if the employees are remote. But I know it is harder to build team rapport, but I think that's when making sure that you're seeing each other's faces when you're having meetings. I think it's important to turn on your cameras. And maybe that is the Gen X in me. I don't know. But I think it is important to see people's faces and see their reactions. And so I think that you can still build on these ideas. They may just have to, sometimes I just have to get a little bit more creative about maybe how you do recognition, but I think it's definitely possible.
Great, thanks so much. Our next question is, how do you build trust among team members who are new to each other?
Elliani, I'd be interested to hear what you say on this because you said you've only been in your position for a year, right? Yeah, so how has that worked for you for the last year?
Yeah, I was trying to gather my thoughts, so thanks for highlighting me. I honestly think the best thing that my supervisor did was I mean, I'm like a visual learner, and she asked me in the interview, what kind of learner are you? So she knew when I came in, and she knew that I liked to see it and then I liked to do it. So the first month I was just shadowing a bunch of people and learning what they did. And then the second month, even though I didn't feel like I was ready, they said, great, now you're leading the meetings. And they still had people with me in the background answering all of the questions. Honestly, we take pretty team approaches. I still usually go to meetings with more than just me so that there's people in the background who can answer the questions I can't. But it was a lot of like, okay, you've learned the ropes and we're just going to throw you in there now. And that was really good for me because I had to build trust in myself. So even though I was really worried on month 2 that I had to lead a meeting, I had to trust that I could do it and that I had the information. I had to have trust in my coworkers who were going to be there with me, that they weren't just going to leave me out to dry, right? But then also that created the coworkers who were coming to these meetings with me that I was leading. They built, I mean, I would like to think that they then had trust in me because they saw how I interacted and how I led that meeting, and what I did when I didn't know the answer, and how we could all kind of rely on each other in that, if that makes sense. So for me, it was giving me a basic foundation and then letting me just try it out for myself, even if I didn't think I was ready.
So what you're saying is your employer followed all of those things in the Forbes article, basically, right? She
Yep.
empowered you, she invested in you as a person, and she invested in you as an employee, right? So she was doing all the right things. You should give
Yeah.
her a gold star for that, right?
I should recognize her for that, is what I should do.
Perfect. Okay. And then our next question is, how do you encourage collaboration between departments or silos? And I think one possible suggestion actually goes back to what Elliani was saying about the kind of the shadowing. I think shadowing people in different teams can be helpful. At least in our office, there's kind of 3 teams. You have, pre-award, the awards team, and then the post-award team. And so I think getting an idea of kind of what each team does is really helpful and kind of builds rapport. If you develop those relationships with those people, I think it makes it easier to collaborate then, to kind of get out of those silos. So I think that shadowing can be a really good opportunity.
I would also say just the way we talk, instead of saying us versus them, or this is how we do things and that's how they do things, or that's what that faculty does or that department does, just making it more inclusive language. I don't mean to say that we can't vent sometimes, because sometimes you need to complain, but maybe in more formal settings or in emails, or when you are having those difficult conversations, frame it as an us problem, not as a they problem.
I really like that. I think that's good. What you say becomes your ideas kind of thought there. So that's great. All right. Our next question is, what's a powerful question you ask during one-on-one check-ins to understand motivation?
One of the things I ask every single time is, what do you have to celebrate this week? And I think that helps us not just dive headfirst in all the negative things that are happening, or all the problems that we're facing, issues that are coming up. It's gives us some place to start from a positive, and a celebration, but also that leads me to be able to see what they're really proud of. And that leads me to what motivates them. And so I think that's been a really important question and thing that we do in all of our one-on-ones.
I'm going to type this out in the chat, but the presentation had 2 that I really liked, that are what kind of work makes you lose track of time, and what's something others often come to you for help with. I think those are two ways to, well, I mean, that they were finding your strengths, but I also think that helps build that rapport in themselves and with you as their supervisor.
Yeah, I love that. I think those are really good suggestions. All right, well, I'll pause here for a couple moments. If anyone has any last kind of lingering questions, if they want to put them in the chat, and we will try to answer those.